One really obvious sign of a politicized mind is the obsession with they. When we start exclusively focusing on them or what they are doing. And that's something that I think can be observed in the media landscape itself. A few years ago, it was mostly Fox News, which was them oriented. So it was fascinating to watch how pretty much 80% or 90% of their content was about them, about what the other side is doing. It was not about facts. It was not about significant events. It was not about. It wasn't about policies, but it was about interpreting what they are up to, what the other side is doing, and of course picking out the most outrageous aspects and the most outrageous interpretations of what they could possibly mean and what they could be up to. Now, this way of thinking has for quite a while also been spreading in progressive circles. So when I look at the major influencers like Kyle and Crystal or Sam Cedar or the Young Turks or Luke Beasley, most of their content, I would say 90% or even more, is focused on them, on interpreting what the other side is up to, and focused on group identity. And the moment your mind has switched into a group identity and a tribal mode of thinking, you don't have an I-thou relationship anymore. Everything becomes an I-it relationship. So in other words, when you see an event or when you see a person, events and people and actions, all of that become signifiers. They become its, representing some kind of motive, some kind of intentions of the other side. There is a strong obsession with how they supposedly are thinking, how the other side supposedly is constructing the world. There is an obsession with the other side's perspective of things. But the irony here is that the other side's perspective is never really heard. So what you usually presented with to be the other side's position are really bad caricatures of what the other side is meaning. And this becomes obvious when you ask people, well, how do you know what the other side means? Like just recently, Jimmy Kimmel made the comment that MAGA is obsessed with pinning the assassin to be everybody else but one of them, something on these lines. And to the one side, to the conservative position, it's obvious that this means that he wants to pin it on MAGA itself so that he's one of them. Even though structurally the sentence itself, what the sentence means, it is at the very least unclear. It is at the very least, it can at the very least have multiple meanings, but the direct meaning of the sentence is that literally MAGA is trying to find everywhere else blame but in its own camps and to use it for political purpose. This is a factual statement. This is, if this is the meaning of the sentence, this is what factually is the case. I mean, I couldn't think of a single example where MAGA people would even have considered the possibility of the shooter being one of them and having been radicalized and influenced by their own ideology. But the point in question here is not what Jimmy Kimmel actually meant with this statement, but the point in question is that people jump to conclusions immediately and think to know what he actually is intending with his speech. And this is actually easy to test because the only thing you would have to do, you would have to ask the person, hey, how did you mean it? But this is not happening. People are not even interested in asking the question. And the second thing you could do is ask, what did people take away from the sentence, right? How did the people who were listening to it, how did the audience, the liberal audience, interpret the sentence? This is also something that people are not interested in. But that's how we assimilate information. We don't assimilate information by a sentence being copied into our brains, but by making associations, fitting something in our pre-existing frame, and interpreting it. So we're making annotations, kinda, and keeping certain aspects of what we read. And to figure out what we keep, you have to ask the person, right? This is why we do exams, because in an exam you have to actually figure out what the person understood and took away from reading a text, but nobody's interested in that. The only thing we're interested in when our minds are politicized, in jumping to conclusions about what supposedly the other side is thinking and is. And this is very much like what happened, I think, during the Second World War. You had an obsession with the Jews. It was something that's predominant. It's something that's there all the time, and it kind of makes sense because in a warlike situation, they is one of the most significant categories. I mean, they trumps pretty much everything else because that's the enemy. That's somebody who can actually take your life away. And it makes sense to play this kind of game where I guess the idea is not so much to be interested in them to figure out what they're meaning and what they're doing and how they're perceiving reality. There is no real interest in the perspective of the other side. But it actually serves the purpose to point and signal to others how absurd the other side is so that people switch sides. It has this basically, so our engagement with each other doesn't have as an interest to understand the other side, but it serves it serves warlike functions, which again makes sense. I mean, in a warlike situation, what you would do is once you have identified your tribe and once you know your side, is to paint the other side as black so that people come to your side. And it's funny how we are doing this basically automatically. We're not reflecting upon this. This is a process that's basically running us. And we're not even aware of why we're doing this, and we're not even aware that we're doing it. We think that we're thinking, and we think that we're making points, and we think that we are reasoning here, and that we're in touch with reality, and that we're figuring out deep connections. But what our minds are mostly doing, they're running automated scripts, which force us, and whether we like it or not, to immediately jump to conclusions whenever we see signs of them. And when we see them, and this is the category of them, the category of they, is not a friendly category. It's a category of juxtaposition. It's a category of rivalry. It's not the notion of we. We and them are opposing categories. So the moment we see somebody fall into the category of them, whether we like it or not, we will read them, we will interpret them in the worst possible light, or we'll strawman, and we will approach this with a bad faith approach. This is inherent to the situation, and it's interesting how everybody does it. It's really spreading like a wildfire on all sides, and it's almost like a mechanism that is activated as a form of self-protection and as a form of protecting yourself from things getting worse. But the irony here is that it's making things worse.